Hey everybody. So I've been trying to figure out what to talk about, and I was just trawling through Reddit and Twitter, and I saw some posts that really kind of triggered a cascade of thoughts. And what I wanted to do today was actually tell you the story of the beginning of my career in information technology and how that ultimately led to virtualization, automation engineering, and then eventually to my pivot to AI. But rather than just tell you this, pardon me, rather than just tell you the story, there's a point, and the primary point is that we are about to see a huge shortage of prompt engineering and AI related jobs. So I've been talking with more and more industry insiders from various places, whether they're consulting for government agencies, other corporations, startup folks, all kinds of stuff. So if you're my age ish, millennial, a little bit older, a little bit younger, you might remember in the late 90s and early 2000s, all of the advertisements about how there was just such a huge shortage of IT people. And if you go get some Microsoft certifications, you're basically guaranteed a job. Now, back in the early aughts, mid aughts, that was actually pretty much true. I remember my mom's boyfriend at the time, he got out of the army and went and got a couple of Microsoft certifications and immediately had a $50 to $70,000 job, which in the late 90s is pretty good. And then I did the same thing a few years later. I started in like 2006, 2007. And back then, the job market in technology was very, very different. It was basically like you get a toehold in the door, and then there was just like they didn't even know what to call the jobs. Like now you'd have a job like, okay, IT server, engineer or desktop support. Literally every low level IT job was just called IT analyst, and they didn't even know how to define the damn things. Like that's how chaotic it was because it was just not like nailed down. It was not well defined or clearly defined. And so like HR people didn't know how to describe the jobs, and hiring managers are like, we just need some young guy who knows computers and can fix stuff. And that was me. That's how I got my career started. So what I'm predicting is that we're about to see a similar kind of growth over the next 2 to 5 years of basically just anyone who can talk to AI. So that means like all you young people out there, that you just naturally are good at Chat GPT and Claude if you're watching this, and not even necessarily if you're young. Particularly if you do have some other subject matter expertise or computer expertise, and you can combine that with artificial intelligence. But let me tell you a little bit more about how the job market was very different in the late aughts and early 2010s. Basically, because I was very, very like low level at the beginning of my career. I was paid $35,000 a year, which is like not even enough to live on today. But I was sent to all kinds of training. And so what happens is, looking back, when you have a huge demand, out in the job market, but then you don't have the supply, the labor supply to really meet that demand, companies realize, okay, we can't hire. Like there's nobody out there to hire to do this job. So we have to get someone who's good enough and then train them. Now, I predict that that's what we're really going to see. We're already seeing it at the higher levels. So, for instance, Netflix and other companies are shelling out $1 million salaries or $800,000 salaries for AI product owners or AI directors of product. But that's going to trickle down over time. And so what I mean by like trickle down, I don't mean like trickle down economics, but what I mean is, a director who understands AI is going to realize that none of his employees understand AI. And actually last year I was contacted by quite a few people to like come do like on-site training. I ultimately didn't do it because I was too tired and I didn't want to travel. But that's why I make these videos, is because I don't have to travel and I can reach hundreds of thousands of people. So, okay, you might say like, all right, maybe, maybe not, because I know a lot of you out there are still predicting that like AI is going to quickly give way to AGI and then, AGI, ASI, and nobody's going to have any jobs. And I do still think that that's going to happen, but talking to industry insiders, it's like they're looking at like 5 years or more until like it's really prime time. And of course, you might say like, okay, well, 5 years from now, we're going to have AGI and robotics and nobody's going to have any jobs anyways. That's entirely possible. I'm not going to say that that's outside the realm of possibility, just because this is like a shift, a paradigm shift in how we approach work and labor and economics and everything. But in the meantime, from now until 5 years from now, or 2030, or whenever it is that we hit that huge transition, there's probably going to be even more jobs posted for prompt engineering, or even jobs that use chatbots or that kind of thing. And then, of course, all the ancillary skills around it, such as like API integration, A/B testing prompts, and all sorts of stuff, building agent frameworks, all kinds of things. I remember one of the conversations that I had with someone at a local company when I very beginning of my career, when I was literally just plugging in computers. I was a computer desktop installer at the very beginning of my career, and I was upgrading the computer for a guy who was an web framework developer. So web frameworks are all like off the shelf, and like nobody develops that anymore. But back then, companies had to develop their own in-house frameworks. And so like we have this credential inflation, and things just kind of get easier. And so like LangChain and agent frameworks and all the stuff that you have to build manually right now, within a few years, those are going to be just like off the shelf kinds of products. But what I want to tell you is that all of you people out there right now working on building, workflows, LangChain kind of stuff, agent frameworks, those sorts of things, you're doing everything the hard way right now, which, I mean, if you were installing computers in the 90s or early 2000s, like Windows XP installs were so fragile and required so much hand-holding, but now installing operating systems is super easy. Likewise, building agent frameworks and building agent models right now, very difficult, but within the next year or two, it's going to get much easier. But everything that you're learning right now, like at the very low level in terms of what works, what doesn't, everything behind the scenes. Yeah, like in a year or two, you're going to be like, kids these days, I had to do all this stuff manually. Now it's all, we have model arbitrage and, model agnostic design and blah, 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 all this. But you're still going to benefit from knowing what's going on under the hood. And that will really set you apart when you're looking for, whether you're interviewing at an enterprise company or talking to startup founders, or anything in between, or even trying to pitch to a venture capitalist if you are a startup founder. Getting in at the ground level. And here's another thing that I tell a lot of people, because like particularly young people, whether many of you in my audience or whatever, if you're in college or high school, you say like, oh, like I'm just afraid that the skills that I'm learning are just going to be useless. And it's like, but that's been true forever. Like you talk to most people in professional spaces, they haven't used what they learned in college for years, sometimes decades. So to put this into context, I learned Pascal and C++ back in high school. I haven't used either of them I haven't used Pascal since high school, to put that into perspective. But the last time I used C++ was when I was experimenting with neural networks back in 2009. That was 15 years ago. So it's not that the skills that you learn are like, it's not the skills that are valuable. It's the ability to learn and building the mental frameworks of technology and science and programming and math and those sorts of things. Because then going from C++ to Python, it's like, oh, wow, I can really appreciate how much Python is doing for me in the background. I don't have to compile anything. It has, it does all the memory management. Like there's so much that Python does for you that you don't have to worry about, that you would have had to worry about with Pascal or C++. Likewise, LangChain version 3 and Agent, Forge version 8 and AutoGen version 12, whatever's coming down the pipeline are going to make everything that you're struggling with right now much easier, but you will have done yourself a huge favor by getting in at the ground level. So like that's kind of a big chunk of what I wanted to talk about. But then another part was just like that, going back to that gap, like the demand for AI literate people at all levels of organization. This is not just individual contributors, but the demand for AI literate people at all levels of organizations is about to skyrocket. I'm predicting within a year or two, if not sooner, you're going to see more and more people that are like, and people, I mean like companies hiring for jobs like, hey, we need a supervisor supervisor of a new generative AI team. We need a mid-level manager of a new, generative AI product team. We need a new, senior engineer or junior developer who is familiar with, generative AI and cybersecurity or DevOps or whatever. Like there are going to be so many jobs, and this is just inside of the tech bubble, right? The IT, software development, that branch of companies. But even more so, what I'm hearing out there in talking to insiders is that mid and senior level leadership are basically the more let's say experienced, and the ones with more wherewithal are realizing that AI is advancing faster than the old fuddy-duddies can keep up with. And they're saying you need to hire someone in their 20s who eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff, and you need to talk to them. So like you're gonna see more AI advisors kind of roles, where it's like, hey, you might be a dork, an engineer, someone who is going to be tinkering with all the latest stuff, but there's going to be a place for you, even if you're not necessarily super experienced on the business side. What I will say is that the ability to communicate, this is something that I have been saying. I've been beating this drum for a while, but I'm also hearing more and more people say this, is that the ability to communicate, whether that is participating in meetings, negotiation, presentation skills, super important, being able to talk to executives, being able to talk to managers on their terms, being able to talk to business people on their terms, those are all going to be extremely valuable skills, particularly when paired with AI literacy and AI competence skills. And there's different levels, because there's when I say like AI literacy and AI competence, like at the very like low level, and I don't mean low level like low rank, but I mean like people that can build neural networks. I've worked with some of those kinds of people as well. Like if you know the math, if you can build, a TensorFlow model, a Keras model, great. Like that is still super useful. If you can deploy those in, in a full stack, hardware soup to nuts, kind of deployment model or job role, great. But then also at the higher level, and so I guess by higher level I mean higher level of abstraction, because I'm thinking in terms of like C++ is a low level. There's like assembly, C++, Python. So at a higher level abstraction, prompt engineering and understanding the epistemic model of how AI works, because it's really weird. And what I mean by like epistemics of AI is, if you talk to a philosopher about what AI is doing, they're going to give you one answer. They're going to say, oh, well, it's just pretending to know things. I'm like, okay, well, what's the difference between pretending to know and actually knowing if it's objectively measurably the same? But again, philosopher perspective. You ask a mathematician what the model is doing, and they say it's just calculating matrix math. Okay, sure. But that's like asking a chemist what the human brain is doing. So anyways, you ask different people what these things are doing at different levels, and that multidisciplinary understanding of what models are doing also is going to be hugely important, because the business folks, the finance folks, they're just going to care, how much does it cost, what is the ROI, is it worth deploying? So if you can talk about like quantization strategies or distillation strategies, or can we get by using a 150 billion parameter model, or a 4 trillion parameter model, or a 6 billion parameter model? Like if you understand those optimization, like the math going behind it, whether, what kind of software container it needs to run on, what kind of hardware container it needs to run on, its impact to the business, there's all kinds of ways to look at what is coming down the pipeline. And there are, like at the highest echelons of some of the top, Fortune 500 companies, they are having these conversations behind closed doors. They're not talking about it publicly yet. But at conferences or private consultations, they are saying, "Hey, we know that this is coming down the pipeline. How do we prepare for it? And who do we need? What do they need to know?" Those sorts of questions are being asked behind closed doors. And so with all that in mind, I'm here to tell you that keep investing in AI skills, but also just as important as that, equal. So like AI competence and literacy, and low level building models, or more higher level of abstraction of prompt engineering, and knowing how those things fit into businesses. But then also the people skills, whether it is negotiation, presentation skills, schmoozing. I know a lot of you out there, particularly a younger version of me, would have been like, ugh, schmoozing, small talk. I don't care about that. But you know what? We're all humans, and that's how the human operating system works. And it's just another skill, right? So computer programming is a skill, video gaming is a skill. Just treat communication as another skill set, another skill tree that you can invest skill points in. You'll be fine. Those are going to be the things that really set you apart. And so there's a few things, like just personally why I'm making this video and why I want more of you out there, is because I do see that the friction is coming. Deployment is going to be difficult, even if you have AGI that's super intelligent. Yes, there's going to be some drop-in technologies. And what I mean by a drop-in technology is where you just replace a human wholesale with a new robot or something. It's probably going to be a while before that's possible, 5 to 10 years before it's like wholesale, just get all humans out of the loop. And I do believe that that's coming, but like a lot of you, I want to get there sooner rather than later. I don't want to get any older. I want to start solving problems. I want to cure aging and cancer and, get to nuclear fusion and AGI and everything else that's coming. But there's a lot of barriers to get from there to here, or from here to there, rather. And so, in the meantime, I want as many of you to get AI jobs as possible. So, with all that being said, I am launching a community which will help you on this path. Links will be in the description. And put it this way, stay tuned. July 27th, depending on when you're watching this, is when we're going to have a pre-launch, and then August 5th, I believe, is going to be the public launch. So stay tuned, mark your calendars for August 5th, and we will make sure to get you in to my brand new community, the New Era Pathfinders, because we do have to find our way through this new era of AI and all the other Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies that are coming. So, thanks for watching. Have a good one. Cheers.